And I think working in these hospitals, sometimes we did calls where, as a community service doctor, you're doing an MO call because it's understaffed. So for a lot of us, I think even in my view, it isn't a thing of feeling entitled to a post, but it's rather knowing that you're needed, knowing that the communities around us are actually suffering, and there's definitely a necessity for you to be hired, but then still the need isn't being met. So much I would say it's not so much my constant need of fulfillment in terms of getting a job and getting money, but I think feeling like that gap needs to be breached, and it isn't right that the gap exists in the first place. So they definitely need you, Yeah, so I think that's why it hits so much, because the patients, I guess, that you care about are the ones that are suffering.
I mean, like, everybody knows government. Like, there's a lot of people complaining. I think, what's the guy who complained recently about, like, Helen Joseph?
Tom London.
Tom London. So there's a poor state in public healthcare.
Yes.
And we know that, like, it's almost like 80-something%, 85% of the general population are using government healthcare. They don't have medical aid. A very small percent of people are using medical aid. So a lot of us are using the government healthcare system, and there's a big need for that to be improved. So we need a lot of doctors to be employed in that system.
Yes.
And also, a lot of people don't understand that. People think that, oh, why do you want the government to employ you? Why can't you do something else, right? And the main way of training in the country is through the government sector. Right? You need to actually go and, like, medical students start the government sector in the public hospitals, right? All training happens in the government hospitals. So it's a necessary step that we have to go through in the government system. People will be like, go and do something else.
Yeah, it's not that simple, yeah.
And another one, I think, we also forget, especially in our country, like Nassim just pointed out, where you find 15%, actually it's probably even less than that, like the number of people that use medical aid. It's a very small number that are serviced by a lot of hospitals and a lot of specialist doctors.
Sure.
So if you have to move into a field like that, you basically have no place. Those people have probably a 1:1 if you were to really look into it. So you're not really needed there. And there's no training for you there.
True.
But just going back to government, I think you touched on something very important. The fact that, the biggest problem that as a country we've had is that the Minister of Health or just the health department hasn't been looking into improving infrastructure, increasing the number of posts, as they've been focusing on getting sort of, a lot of African or black doctors trained. For example, look at the Nelson Mandela Fidel Castro that foundation, or that thing where they were sending people to Cuba, to get trained. I mean, that program, I think in a year produces something like 300 to 500, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a large number of students that come from abroad.
I think the plan with that was to actually get them to go out into the peripheries because their primary healthcare is so good in Cuba. Is to essentially train them in an environment where they've got excellent primary healthcare, and then put those doctors where they need to be. So taking doctors from Limpopo. So on a sort of a bursary scholarship type program, where they would take doctors from Limpopo, Mpumalanga, Eastern Cape, and other rural areas, and then taking those doctors and putting them back into their local environments to improve the primary healthcare in those areas. I think that essentially was the idea to begin with, but now we've overproduced. We've flooded the market, pretty much. There's oversupply and there is a demand, but we're just not meeting the demand, because it's definitely a demand. We see a huge exodus now of doctors moving. The most popular place is Ireland, because you don't need to write any conversion exams. So I know a lot of colleagues of mine that have gone that route, packed up and just went there. But then the problem is you go to like foreign countries and you're treated as an outsider there, and they don't want you to specialize there. They want you to just be part of the workforce. So a lot of the doctors that end up going to Ireland either stuck in a post, or they're happy as a general practitioner, which is fine, or end up coming back. I know a few that have worked in some of the bigger cities in Ireland, and literally they made them sit in the emergency department, would not allow them, no matter what they tried, no matter what exams they did, no matter what experience they got, nothing. They just couldn't progress.
And there's also they're also trying to limit the amount of international medical graduates going into other countries. Like UK they're now prioritizing people who qualified in that country instead of other countries, right? Even the same thing's happening in America. And so, Doc, have you thought about leaving and going somewhere else?
Sure. I think, look, obviously that's a conversation a lot of people always have, you know. I will say, I don't, like, not to really get racial, but I don't think as an African man it's easy to blend in everywhere, you know. It's for the same reason why we'll probably never have a black James Bond. You know, if something happened, you intentionally know that that's probably Bond. You can't hide behind unless he wears one of those things, you know. And I think that's just the thing for me. The thought of just going into like this new space, and it's new things, man. Like you don't know the people, you don't know people's prejudices, you know. And I always say, I love South Africa in that racism never catches me, you know, without me actually expecting it. You know, I'm always just prepared. I'm always on my toes. You know, you're in another country, you don't know what history and prejudices people actually have. And I think one of the biggest problems I have is I believe in that African saying that it takes a village to raise a child, right? So for that reason, obviously the village starts to represent community. So for that reason, even when I think about it, like the thought of being raised by this community here helping me grow, become a doctor, and then all of a sudden when I'm qualified, you're telling me to pack my bags and you're stealing that opportunity from me to give back to the community that raised me. And you're saying I need to go give to a community that doesn't even know me, that doesn't welcome me, that doesn't appreciate me. I honestly feel like it would be an injustice. For that reason, leaving and going to another country for me is not something I'm open to.